With Life is Strange Double Exposure releasing in 2 months, I thought it'd be a great time to revisit Life is Strange 1, as it's been years since I played the original, which I still think is the best. But instead of just going straight to 1, I decided to play the prequel, Life is Strange Before the Storm. Going into this, I was hoping to gain additional context to the events that happened in the first Life is Strange, and it's safe to say that I received that, plus a whole lot more. When it comes to these story-driven interactive games, if the story isn't good, then the game completely falls apart. Thankfully, that's not the case with Before the Storm. Taking place in 2010, you play as Chloe Price as she attempts to sneak into a rock concert. After being introduced to the gameplay mechanics, you eventually meet Rachel Amber, who becomes Chloe's new best friend or partner, depending on how you choose to build their relationship. Regardless of what you choose, this game does a great job at giving the player a greater understanding of some of the characters involved in the original Life is Strange. Rachel, Chloe, David, Frank, and Mrs. Price are all expanded upon, and you're able to see why these characters act the way they do. What's even better is that it connects the dots so well to the first Life is Strange and adds so much context to things that are constantly referred to in that game. The interactions between all the characters are memorable and none of it ever feels forced. Even the most simple of encounters hold some significance in regards to relationship building between the characters in that specific scene. For example, in the beginning you go outside and see David fixing up his car. This encounter between David and Chloe is simple, but does an excellent job at showing the current state of their relationship, even though David is just fixing up a car. Similar to other Life is Strange games, this title does a great job of slowly drip fitting you the story while disguising what's really going on. Even with me playing the first Life is Strange before, this prequel added so much to the overall world of Arcadia Bay. Just as you think you know what's going on, a curveball is thrown your way that will have your head spinning. To put it simply, not everything is as it seems, and even if you're good at putting things together, this game is sure to have a moment or two that leaves you pretty surprised. Most importantly, what this game does best is showing the relationship between Chloe and Rachel. In the original, Rachel is mentioned over and over, but you can never comprehend who she was and what she meant to Chloe. However, with this being a prequel, you can gain a deeper understanding of that character and everything she comes with. What's even better is that if you haven't played Life is Strange 1, then the entire plot is set up nicely, and the transition from this game to that one is very smooth. What I think is an underrated aspect of this game was how well the devs made Arcadia Bay feel the same, but different. Since you go to various areas throughout the 3 episodes, you'll see some familiar places, but even then the whole vibe has changed. Just walking around campus and interacting with side characters help build their stories up while adding to the overall immersion of Arcadia Bay. Even later on in the story, you'll find yourself in situations that are simple, but really gives credence that Arcadia Bay is an actual city, filled with tons of people and areas. Littered within these places are monuments and other notable things that show the history and previous events this town has gone through. Just gaining a bit more of an understanding for this place makes you care about the setting for this game more than you might think. Now maybe it's just me, but for some reason I thought that reading every collectible actually felt worth it as you go through each episode. It could be a piece of paper, an email, or other notable items, but they all provide additional backstory in regards to a certain character. Like when you break into a character named Drew's room, there are tons of things that you can look at. By looking at the letters around his desk, you can see that he was offered scholarships to play football at both the University of Oregon and Oregon State. Moments like these offer more information about that character that allows you to see the game from their perspective. As you read more emails and documents, you'll be able to piece together what certain side characters are going through and understand a lot more about their backstory. It doesn't seem like it would matter much, but having access to additional info will make you think about the decisions that you made earlier and how you could have done things differently. Aesthetic-wise, this game feels exactly as it should. Whether you're walking around at home, campus, or somewhere else, this title perfectly captures the feel of Arcadia Bay. The entire atmosphere of this game is comfy. Combine that with the inclusion of the side characters and you may find yourself completely immersed in this game. To me, it feels really homey, especially with how all the characters seem to be connected in ways you wouldn't expect. If you want to play a game to relax and just vibe out to, you should definitely add this to your list. This game isn't all perfect, as I thought some things were resolved a bit too fast and some of the plot could have been spread out a bit further. In addition, some of the gameplay sections that you do in between the cutscenes feel like filler. Now I understand that in a story-driven game like this, there isn't going to be a whole lot of exciting things you're doing, but some of it just felt a little mundane. Maybe the structure of these sections could have been tweaked, but there were times that I found myself like, okay, this is really what we're doing? Another issue might pertain just to the remastered version. For the majority of the game, the environment and character models all look so much better than they did before, but it's jarring to see some of these characters next to the low-res objects. Like, it's so jarring that it may take you out of the actual moment entirely. There's tons of times where Chloe will be right next to an object that looks like it's in 240p while herself is nice and clear. It's not a huge deal, but if you're going to remaster this game, be sure to update the graphics enough so certain things don't stick out as much. And finally, the last issue I had with this game was just the subtitles. Maybe it's just a remastered version, but for some reason the subtitles would get stuck during the dialogue segments. It wasn't super consistent, but it was definitely noticeable. I would say if it really bothers you that much, maybe consider turning them off, but usually when entering gameplay or a new scene, they would reset and line back up with what was being spoken. It's just a small issue, but one that I thought was really weird. Speaking of the gameplay, it doesn't do a whole lot to innovate the wheel, but something worth mentioning were the back talks that Chloe could get into. During the dialogue segments, there's moments where Chloe could try to get what she wants by back talking to the other person. Essentially what this was you reading through the lines of the opposite person and choosing a specific dialogue option that would give you the advantage. I didn't do every one of these, but when I did, it made me really think about what I was going to say, because most of the time I don't put too much effort into those choices. They seem a bit tough at first, but after you do them a couple times, you'll get the hang of it. Even though it's subtle, I thought it was cool for the devs to try and implement a new mechanic for this prequel, especially considering this is just a story game. The last thing I wanted to mention was the bonus episode, Farewell. When you see the cover for this episode, you may think about skipping it entirely. But in my opinion, you should absolutely not do that. You play with Max, the main character from the first game, years prior to Before the Storm. Over the course of Before the Storm, Chloe constantly mentions Max and how she left her to go to Seattle. And in this brief episode, you finally see how all of that plays out. But what's even more important is that you see Chloe before she goes through all the trauma and loss. She's actually a sweet, wholesome kid who isn't as rebellious and got good grades in school. To see her character act completely different than how she does later on is really weird, but in a good way. This episode gives you insight into why her personality changes, and just seeing that on screen made it feel like I was playing a different game entirely. My point is, just because this episode is listed as bonus, don't skip it. Give it the time and attention that it deserves, because it's the perfect icing on the cake when finally finishing this game for good. Overall, Life is Strange Before the Storm is a great prequel that sets the stage for what many consider to be the best game in the series, Life is Strange 1. If you're lucky enough to not have played 1 already, then I highly recommend you playing this prequel first, because it will be so worth it when moving on to the next game. All the additional story context regarding the characters will make the first game hit on an entirely different level. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game a 9. This game doesn't do anything crazy to separate it from other Life is Strange games, but I don't necessarily think it needed to. Just giving us the extra story beats makes this game a must play if you've already played 1 or plan on playing it soon. This game goes on sale a lot of the time, so the next time you see it discounted, I would recommend going through this because it's definitely worth it. Life is Strange Before the Storm is incredible and adds so much to Chloe's story that we don't get to see in the first game. What did you think about Life is Strange Before the Storm? Did you play this? If so, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed the video, feel free to check out one of my other reviews right here.